Hey guys, welcome in. Another episode of Sit Down Shut Up. Today we have Unbeknown. Unbeknown is talking, they're an ed player, Diamond 3. They're talking mostly about spacing, or sorry, they're struggling mostly with spacing, converting trades and combos, making use of Oki, and mixing up when all the opponent does is block. Alright, so let's bring them on. Hey Unbeknown, can you hear me?
Yo, yes, I can hear you.
Ooh, one sec. I think my sound is off. 1 second, guys.
I,
Why is that piping to the wrong thing? Hey, can you hear me?
hey, yes, I can
Hey,
hear
all
you.
right. I think that
Yep.
should be okay now. So Discord had my Discord sound heading to a different audio for some reason. But anyway, how you
Oh,
doing today?
yeah. Windows does be like that.
Yeah. So cool, man. So I was just saying on stream that you were saying that you're clearly Diamond 3 playing Ed. You're having some issues with spacing, converting straights into combos, and then just Oki situations, right? As well as opening up
Right.
defensive playstyles. That sound about right?
Yeah. I think if I would rephrase that, I think my biggest issue would be where my from my perspective, like the opponent moves quite fast. I literally last time checked on Super Combo, I felt like Ken for example walks way faster than Ed. Well, that isn't true at all.
Mm-hmm.
It just from my perspective, it just looks like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I just have trouble knowing when to push certain buttons in neutral. And once I get a knockdown, the thing with Oki is that I used to always just like either kill rush or dash in their face just to get the plus situation
Mm-hmm.
going. Um, if they block or if they tag, distance gets created. But I noticed that when there's when my opponent like doesn't pressure me on knockdown but just walks back,
Mm-hmm.
I notice how very frustrating it can be to try to get free from that because they're at a distance where they can whiff punish, do everything right.
Mm-hmm.
While I cannot do anything. Like I put one micro walk forward, I just get clipped.
Okay.
And lately in these matches, I think I tried exactly that, my thought process. Like, hey, what if I just take some distance? But honestly, I have no clue what to do at that point. Like, I
Okay.
don't know what I look for. So,
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I think that's a pretty common thing to happen to players when they start getting into kind of these diamond ranks. Is that a lot of times in kind of the lower ranks, say like silver, gold, platinum, you can kind of just do whatever you want, right? And people will sometimes they'll just fall to it, right? Or other times they'll pick the same defensive option over and over again. So then you just kind of apply a meaty setup of some kind, and then they just keep getting hit, right? And you're able to win the game from there. So now I
right.
think
Yeah.
around this time, around this rank, these days anyway, the neutral game becomes a little bit more important, mostly because now people aren't making the same kind of big mistakes the same way they used to, right? So, like, imagine if you wouldn't, I don't know where you started from, but like in silver, gold, even lower platinum, a lot of people will just kind of do whatever, right? And safe, unsafe doesn't
Right.
matter, right? Like, they'll just do it. And then you get a fat punish from it, and then you just do that 2 3 times and that's game, right? But now
Yeah.
people aren't making those mistakes anymore, so the actual things that they are the mistakes that they are making become more subtle, right? It's not so much like, oh, I just blocked their reversal DP. Now mistakes come in the form of, oh, they pressed when they shouldn't have, or they backed up when they shouldn't have, or I'm backing up when I shouldn't have, that type of thing. So
Right.
pretty common. Let's we'll get into it. We'll see where you're kind of struggling with and go from there. So I invited you to a custom room. Basically, what we're gonna
Mhm.
do is we'll run a first to three. I'll
Right.
kind of get a sense of like, what's kind of going on and all that. After that, we'll do a little replay review. So we'll take a look at one of the games that we played, as well as one of the replays that you sent me, right? So we'll talk about
Mhm.
what might be happening during those. After that, if there is a situation that I think we need to get into, we could do a little lab work. So we'll hop
Mhm.
into the training room, take a look at a couple situations that I think if we need to kind of explore a point, we'll do that. And then after that, depending if
Mhm.
there's time, we can do another first to three after, kind of get a sense of like if those things are helping or not, right? So if that all sounds
Right.
good to you, let's go ahead and queue up. I'm gonna deafen in Discord while we're playing, mostly because I talk a lot during this
All right.
section.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to impact anything you're doing overall. Then also,
Right.
I may not rematch right away, so the timer may run down a little bit. So don't worry about it. I'm
Hmm.
still here. I'm just continuing to talk through what I'm seeing on screen, so that way I'll be able to kind of be. I'm kind of preparing myself to talk about the situations when we go into replay review. So go ahead and queue up either
Right.
side, and then we'll go from there.
Right.
All right. Good luck.
Good luck.
Hey Zane, what's good? So I haven't played Unbeknown. Diamond 3 Ed, I think they're in the Fight Rise. I don't know if I've seen them in NFC. I've definitely seen them chatting in Fight Rise, looking for games and stuff, so let's see what's going on. The Ken clip? Are you talking about the Blanca one? Okay. Okay, they tried to... Oh. Okay, I think their issue right now... their spacing isn't terrible. But I think they're pressing some of Ed's slower kick buttons at a space that's a little too close. Right there. Like, you see that, how the crouch, was it crouch medium kick whiffed? Okay, good blocks. Good stand medium kick. A little bit of rollback. It's okay. Are they gonna attack? Good tech. Yeah, okay. So, I think there's a little bit of autopilot happening too, right? That target combo by itself, I think, is not safe if they do that, or it's kind of minus. So what I'm seeing right now is that they're kind of pressing buttons, right? Which is fine. But when they're minus, they're continuing to press, right? And that can be kind of problematic for someone like me that challenges a lot of what they're trying to do, right? Take the turn back fine. They don't press on the plus frames. So they try to walk up and press. All right, let's see this. Let's see the reversal here, right? Oh, nice. Nice reversal. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's kind of in line with what they're thinking, right? Is that they don't quite understand some of the neutral aspects when people aren't just like kind of YOLOing at them. And it might be a little bit of lag too, right? Some drops and stuff, but that's normal. Oh, nice anti-air. Yeah, see, like right there, they're minus. And then they press, right? Oh. Yeah, so that's what it is. I think that their recognition of when they shouldn't be pressing the button is a little bit lack, or like they don't recognize that sometimes. Nice with punish. Good kill rush. Blocks out the Jinrai. It's good. Whiffed. Oh, okay. Nice with punish. RPS. Oh, yeah, this might not be enough, actually. Alright, I went for a jump, didn't need to there. Step medium kick would be a good one. Yeah, I think there's some neutral game stuff we can talk about, but I think a lot of it has to do with like pressing buttons when they shouldn't, when they're minus. You can see a lot of my challenge jabs are kind of clipping them, right? That would suggest to me that they're pressing kind of a bigger button behind their flickers. I would have supered there. Okay. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think where we can go from here mostly has to do with some of the neutral game and decision making, so let's bring him back on. Hey man, so what do you think?
Yo, well, honestly, that didn't go too bad for
Okay.
my feeling. Like
Yeah,
I
no,
had
not at all.
some the few whiff punishes I could have gotten. I like they don't feel intentional, but I think unconsciously they weren't kind of intentional, like halfway there.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, in the corner it was a bit difficult. Like I had a feeling I did not really apply throw that
Mm-hmm.
much, and when I did notice you tagged a few times in one of the last, I think in the last match, I
Mm-hmm.
did try to backdash once, but then
Mm-hmm.
you just jabbed me out
And
of
then
it.
I
So
jabbed, yeah. Yeah, so,
yeah.
yeah, no, I think for your level, you did great. I think that there are some situations we can talk about. Mostly, the way that I was kind of winning was, besides some of the spacing things that we can talk about, the main thing I think I was noticing was that you tend to press follow-up buttons when you're kind of minus, right? So if it's not quite
Mm,
your turn, if I challenge with a jab, it'll hit you, right? So what if I don't know
mm,
if you noticed it, but there were a lot of counter hits after like you would do a flicker button or you would do some sort of string or something like that that ends
yeah,
in a
for sure.
minus situation for you, and then you would try to continue to kind of steal the turn back, and then I would just press my jab and
Mm,
hit you, right? And that's kind of how I was able to
mm,
take my turn, steal kind of a knockdown out of that situation, and then kind of apply pressure from there, right? Either by drive rush or whatever, right? So
right.
I'm sharing my screen in Discord. Let me know if you can see it.
Hmm.
And then we'll take a
Yeah,
look
I
at one of
see
the.
it.
Yeah, we'll take a look at this replay. I think this is one I wanted to look at. I think this is game 2. So let's take a look at this and we'll talk about the situations that were coming up.
Mm,
Yeah. Otherwise, I think like neutral wise, and I know obviously there's a little bit of latency and lag because you're in EU,
yeah,
right?
of
So a little
course.
bit. That's just what it is. It wasn't bad actually overall. But I think we'll take
No,
a
it
look
felt
at what
pretty
was
good.
happening here.
And
Yeah, Street Fighter 6 netcode is
mm.
godlike, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so
Yeah.
pretty standard stuff here so far, right? You do a great job of
Hmm.
blocking plus buttons out of this situation here, right? Holding
Mm.
this, right? And taking your turn back when I'm minus, right? So this is,
Right.
pretty textbook and very well done here, right?
Yeah, this is also one of the moves where they just look like they're minus, right? So
Yeah.
it's like pretty easy for me to just press a button after.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, especially against Ken, because all of Ken's buttons are minus, right? His best move
Oh,
is
okay.
0, this crouching medium punch right here, right? So with drive rush, you
Right.
see this is actually +4. So like
Mm.
normally this is 0, and this is his best normal, like in terms of frame advantage, right? Everything else is
All
minus.
right. Okay.
I mean, obviously there's some consideration with like his light strings, which are chainable, and therefore he can't press whatever. But like
Yeah.
any stray button from Ken here is going to be minus, right? So, but
Mm.
anyway, good recognition here, right? And this is exactly what you want to do for the most part on drive rush cancels, right? When people do them, it looks like you don't tech here, which is totally fine too, right? I think this is totally acceptable to not tech in this situation. Like it's still early, you just block something, no big deal. Take the throw here is probably fine.
Yeah. I don't think I tech at all a lot. Like I barely do that, to
Yeah,
be
and
honest.
that's actually a good thing, right? Because delay tech will get you killed at these levels if you autopilot it, right? So
Yeah, people love this too much here, and I just stopped doing it.
yeah. So let's take a look at what happened right here, right? So I think this is
Yeah.
kind of an interesting point that hopefully we'll see more of, and hopefully will kind of open your eyes to it. So you jump the fireball here.
Hmm.
Right? This whiffs, right? Unfortunate, because that would have probably hit me as
Yeah.
I'm still, well, maybe not. I probably could have recovered in time. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But what happens here is something that happens to a lot of players that I've worked with is that after this happens, your immediate
Hmm.
instinct is to back up, right? So if you look at your inputs here, right, you immediately try to back up, right, and create space for yourself, right? And that's something that I think a lot of players like aren't getting punished for at these levels, which is why this happens a lot. And this is why when you play against someone like me who does a lot of crouch and medium kick, or any sort of Ken player, to be honest, you're gonna get clipped a lot like this. And we see this a lot through the games, and I'm sure you've noticed it, where it's like, how come I'm getting hit by this crouch and medium kick all the time, right? It's busted ass move, right? What's actually happening here is that, and there's kind of a lot. So what happens here is that when you land, right, there's a little bit of recovery, but the space that you land at is inside of Ken's crouch medium kick range, right? So what happens here is that as soon as I recognize that this is whiffed, which takes a little bit of time because I'm old or whatever, but I know it takes a bit of time for me to recognize if you're going to do something right, because a lot of times people will jump and then they'll just press a button immediately, right? So I'm kind of being a little passive here, and then as soon as I recognize you're not doing anything, I kind of make an assumption in my head that you're going to try to back up. Right, and then it clips you because you're inside of that range, right? So the spacing that you landed at,
Hello?
yeah. I think I hit my microphone. Dang it! Hold on.
Oh.
Test. All right, cool. It reconnected. All right, cool. I hit my microphone as I was moving my hand here to move the mouse.
Oh, right. Okay.
Sorry about that. But I was saying is that
the hand waving I cannot see.
Yeah, the hand wave that I'm doing on stream that when you watch this later. What I was saying was that the space that you were at here dictated what options were available to me, and actually what options are available to you, right? So what options are available to that you can consider was based on the spacing, right? So because you're inside of my crouch and medium kick range, if you try to back up here, I can kind of sync up my crouch and medium kick to when I think you're going to move and then try to just tag you with it, right? So this happens a lot, especially at these levels, because, again, your instinct is to, oh, I'm too close, I need to back up, right? I'm not standing in a good spot for myself, so I'm going to back up here. And good players will recognize that tendency and just take advantage of it, right? Every time you're standing too close, they'll just pause for like a beat, wait for you to move, or wait for you, wait until they think you're gonna move, and then just tag you with a low, right? Especially with characters that have cancelable lows, like Ken, obviously, right? You're gonna see this a lot. So the main thing that I would suggest here is that after you block something, so this happens no matter what, right? Anytime something happens, you block something, they block something of yours, a jump in is blocked, right? Or you get hit or whatever. Try to stand your ground a little bit, right? So from right here, you don't have to move, right? You're actually in range for most of your normals, like flickers and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you could consider pressing here, right? Now, obviously, you're minus a good amount, right? Like if you look at the frame meter, I could have pressed at any point here and hit you. I don't, because I thought you were gonna do something and the timing was off or whatever. But if nothing happens in these frames here, you could consider pressing, right? So or if you really want to be a little bit more, you can also consider being passive, right? So just like down backing and crouch blocking here, right? Because what happens if I do this move? Now I just do a safe cancel or a Jinrai cancel here, but if you had blocked this, then you just have to deal with the Jinrai mix up here. Or if I driver's cancel, then you deal with the driver's cancel mix up, right? But that's better than getting hit, right? At least you have a chance to defend. In this case, you're getting hit, so there's no more opportunity, right? So
I mean, if you do crouch medium kick into drivers, it's also costing you 3 bars as well, and I can just block it out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Block it out. Reversal, derev, right? You have options when that happens, right? It's a mix-up opportunity for me, obviously, because I'm advantaged in that situation.
Yeah.
But the mix-up, you can defend it, right? And if you do, then I spend 3 bars for essentially a throw opportunity that gets teched, or strikes get blocked, right? If you defend it correctly. So something to consider, right? The main takeaway though is that and kind of what you were alluding to is that the space between the characters dictates those options, right? So if you're not paying attention to that spacing, it can really feel like you don't know what to do, because all of a sudden all the options that you normally have, or all the options that Ed has, whiff all the time. Whereas for some reason, whenever you get close, you get hit all the time. And it's because of that spacing situation, right? So like if you're aware of the options that you have, as well as aware of the options that the opponent has in those situations, then you can make a decision on what you want to select, right, from there. Whether that be a button, crouch, block, jump, whatever, right? So that's like
especially considering that I just jumped in. So for me, for me, there's no reason to think that they're just gonna walk backwards and forwards constantly. What they do in neutral,
Hmm.
use lots of the time. They just if I jump in, they are gonna react to that, right?
Yeah,
That's pretty
yeah,
that's pretty obvious in hindsight.
yeah, yeah. I mean, consider it right this way: when in the neutral game, generally speaking, right, it's two players that are trying to get into each other's space so that they can press buttons, right? Like at its
Hmm.
core. So when you walk up to somebody, it's going to normally, like typically, it'll elicit some kind of response from them, right? Because
Yeah.
you're walking in and you're about to hit them. They're like, "Oh, I don't want it. I don't want that to happen." So I'm gonna do something. Some people will press a button. Some people will back up. Some people will jump, throw a special, block, DI, whatever. Right? There's an option that will happen typically when you walk up, right? And doing nothing is
Yeah.
also an option, right? They may just block or they may just stand there. So when you do that, you're kind of what you're trying to do is in neutral in general is you're trying to get an understanding of how the other player reacts to those situations, and then that way you can exploit that with whatever the counter might be, right? So like if I walk into your space and you constantly back up, then my reaction would be I'm going to walk forward to where it's uncomfortable for you, but inside of my crouch medium kick range, wait for you to back up and then press my crouch medium kick, right? So something like that is how the neutral game kind of gets played, right? That's like the rock paper scissors, if you will, of neutral, right? So all of that though is dictated by again space between the characters, right? I can't walk up and crouch medium
Mm.
kick you from across the screen, right? So like in your
No.
mind, why would you worried about backing up anymore, right? I'm all the way across the screen. So, but yeah, like you said, like the response that comes out of the other player is what you're paying attention to, right? And like you said, and, in hindsight, it kind of makes sense, right? You did the jump in. I'm just waiting for you to do something now, right? Or at least that's what I
Yeah.
do in this case because we haven't really played each other and it's whatever, and I'm trying to be take in what you're doing so that I can apply a counter to it, right? So
Hmm.
looking at this set, this here, it looks like you tried to challenge, right? You tried to parry, you parry the fireball. So this is actually super annoying to deal with, right, from Ken. Fireball Drive Rush, and Aki and other characters too, right? So you parry this, you're no longer in
Hmm.
stun, right? So you can block.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
you try to challenge with a jab here to check, and then you get clipped, right? So what I would suggest typically at this space when Kens do Fireball Drive Rush or whatever would be to parry the Fireball and then either try to parry this button coming in, or you could
Hmm.
potentially reversal through it, right? So depending on what you think I'm going to do from here, right? This is super annoying to check because the Fireball blocking it kind of locks you into that recovery state, which this is coming in, right? So
Yeah. This is the thing that 100% of Akis always do.
yeah,
Like
right. And
from
the
them,
reason
I just 100% expect it.
Yeah. Another option, if especially against Akis in particular, when they do the OD fireball, they'll throw OD fireball and drive rush behind it, right? That's 3 bars, right?
Hmm.
So an option there would be for you to parry the fireball and then derev the drive rush, right? So what happens in that situation is that you reset it, right? So they go back to neutral. But you spent 2 bars to their 3 bars now, right? So like doing
Ah,
stuff
okay.
like that, that kind of option would be good, and it happens to work pretty well against Ken too. But usually you only do it if the opponent throws an OD fireball, right? So if they throw a 2 bar fireball, then you can consider it because the 2 hits, you have to parry both hits and hold that otherwise. Usually OD fireball
All
again
right.
has better frame data. And if you derev through that, which you can, don't get me wrong, you can if you want to do that. It's just the meter expenditure will, obviously favor the opponent because you spend 2 bars there, 1 bar for the drive rush, right? So just something
Right.
to consider. A situation that had come up, I think, a couple of times during our game. So just a way to deal with that. So anyway, here now you're in the corner, right? So you took a hit, right? Okay. So here you delay tech, which I think is fine, right? You delay tech once through that string, which I think is not a bad option. I think that people, if you are going to delay tech here, you could delay tech potentially through both, through the entire light string. Because if I decide to walk up throw here, it's gonna tag you, right? Or if I decide to throw you after that jab, it's gonna get you, right? If you don't delay tech a second
So
time.
that will be 3 delay tags, pretty much.
Yeah, 2 or 3 delay techs, right? So
Okay.
you can make a decision. So in the corner, when you're dealing with light pressure, right? Typically, the way the game works is that you have like characters that have that kind of light pressure. They'll do anywhere between 1 to 3 lights, right? So after the third light, they're spaced out far enough where their turn is over, basically, right? They can't do it in the light. So you have to make a decision between those 3 lights, right? So the offensive player's mix-up ends up being what do they do after each jab, right? So meaty jab comes in, you block. Do they go for a throw? Do they go for a second button? Do they go for a delay option, right? And then again from there, right? So if I do 2 lights, same deal, right? You have to make a decision there. So I think that if you are going to delay tech here, delay tech in the first one I think is fine, and then observing what I do after was also, this is actually pretty good, right? In terms of the defense of this, right? So what I'm noticing on the offensive side is, okay, I went for 2 lights and they blocked it out. Now, did they delay tech or not delay tech? I'm not 100% sure on the first one, but they only blocked on the second one, right? They didn't delay tech, because if you had delay tech, a throw animation would have come out right after. So,
all right.
so that's what I'm paying attention to, right? So I think this was defended beautifully, right? You did great. You got out of the situation, and now we're back to neutral, right? So just something to consider when you're looking at defensive options, like, because you had talked about how do I deal with the stuff in the corner. You do have to pay attention to how the opponent is applying their light pressure in these situations, right? Because a lot of times these light pressure situations are kind of strike throw, basically strike throw mix-ups, right? I'm not going for a big meaty button that causes a lot of plus frames, right? Or a frame trap through that, right? I'm kind of going for this situation where I'm forcing you to make a decision defensively so that I can try to force you to make that same decision later and blow you up for it, right? So that's kind of what's happening here. Right? And that's why it's complicated, right? Like, especially at these ranks here, you know, diamond, like high platinum through like low to mid diamond, I think a lot of offenses are actually pretty good, right? Like, I'm sure if you run into your average ranked player at your rank right now, if you don't do anything in the corner, they'll run you over, right? They will destroy you if you try to press, right? All their frame traps are tight, right? All the meaties are on point, setups are good, right? So like, there are definitive ways to defend a lot of that stuff, right? But what I'm doing here is I'm kind of taxing your mental stack in a corner so that you feel like you have to make more decisions, right? So that's kind of why, if you look at like the setups that I do in the games we're playing, a lot of times it just felt like you had to guess strike throw, right? Do I delay tech or not? He's not really doing big buttons or baiting me or anything, right? He's just kind of pressing.
Oh, now
buttons.
did you say it?
Yeah. Right, so anyway, we'll take a look at the rest of the sequencing here. Okay. All right. So what happened here, right? And I think we'll see that it's the same situation as before, where the spacing was maybe not correct for you to press the button, right? So here is kind of one of the hardest parts of Street Fighter 6, in my opinion. Especially at the rank you're at now, playing against someone, you know, kind of at my rank, where I'm really keeping you in the corner, right? It feels like you can't jump. It feels like you can't walk forward and all that. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically just poking you in a situation where you can't adjust space anymore, right? So like, it's unfair neutral. But what happens here, let's play it a little bit, right? You press a crouching or a stand medium kick here, right? And it gets stuffed by my crouching medium kick, right? So what's actually happening?
Yeah.
What's happening here is, after this button happens, right? I'm holding down back. I kind of see you start moving, so then I press my button, right? Like, I'm trying to tag you, right? I don't know if it's not, maybe not 100% reaction in particular, but I kind of notice you moving, and then I press, right? The issue here is that the stand medium kick from Ed is pretty slow, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's kind of a longer.
Yeah, so I think 9 frame startup.
It's a pretty long startup, right? So let me just make sure. Yeah, 9 frame you said. So what that means is that, and like the range too, if you consider the range, right? Stand medium kick from where you're standing.
Yeah.
Goes out to, like,
it would have reached either way.
Yeah,
like,
it goes out to like here, right? Like past Ken at this point, right? So there's not really a good reason to press that button in particular, because the advantage of the range is negated by the space, right? So normally when you use a stand medium kick at range, it's really good because it outranges pretty much anything Ken can do, right? I can't hit you without you being able to hit me. But the trade-off is that it has a longer startup and a longer recovery as well, right? It also sends a hurt box out, right? Like the stand medium kick can be with punished by like sweeps and stuff, right? So what that means here is that in this situation, you could have pressed a different button that might have been a little bit faster and still reach me, right? Ed's jab probably won't, right? But a crouching medium punch might, right? Crouching medium kick maybe. Let me just double check here.
Yeah, I think crouch medium punch I don't really often use it. That's also pretty slow. I probably wouldn't crouch light kick something like that.
Yeah, crouch light kick could work too, right? something and then into like a target combo or whatever. Oh, you have a cancel for this, right?
Oh, that's a standing light kick is the
Standing
target
light kick.
combo.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I could use that as well. Yeah, that's
Yeah. So something
completely
like that.
forgot about that move.
Yeah. So basically a different button, right? Yeah, crouching
Yeah.
medium kick probably wouldn't work here, but crouching medium punch might, right? Because that's like eight. Yeah, it's a little bit slow, 8 frames, but it'll reach, right? The point though is that
Yeah.
it's a little bit faster than what you're trying to do here. Maybe crouching medium punch isn't correct here. It could be a light, might be better. So we can take a look. Let's see. So from here, now let's do my best here to do this, but right, crouch jab might have worked there. Something like this, right? Crouching medium punch trades, and again, this is a specific situation, so obviously, like the frame data may not be exact, but you can see that you had some options, right, that were maybe a little bit better than crouching stand medium kick, right? Right.
Yeah.
Either way, though, even if you don't get a huge conversion from this, the main reason you do that is to try to contest space, right? So when you're in the corner, the main thing you don't have access to now is the ability to back up, right? So because you can't back up, you can't adjust space. So what that means is that your opponent can effectively keep you locked in the corner, right? Now again,
Yeah.
what I'm talking about here is going to be a little bit higher level overall. Like you'll see this more and more as you climb up. But I just wanted to plant the seed now to consider this is how you beat a lot of players at your level now, because if you're doing this to them, like imagine how you felt during this situation, right? I can't do anything. I have to reverse
Yeah.
5%, right? Now you can do that to them, right?
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
and if you look again, I'm not taking a ton of risk to do anything I'm doing, right? I'm not making some big read. I'm not trying to, bait you into doing something. Well, not in that way. I'm just using my buttons to control the space, right? And it's very low risk or lower risk versus, jumping or drive rush or like, if I was a cannon spin knuckle or dragon lashing or anything like that, right? I'm just kind of controlling the space the best I can with the buttons that I have, right? And Ed's really,
Yeah.
really good at this, right? Like when you have someone cornered, you're standing outside of most of their button range and you just bully them with flickers and snatcher, right? So like you can just, destroy someone in the corner because they're constantly having to deal with that, right? So
Yeah, I seem to miss that part. Like I did not really identify Ed as one that could do that very well. I do see like I do recognize like in the mid screen like he has a lot of potential for flicker cancels and on a pretty far range. But in the corner, if I would be in your position right now as Ed, wouldn't feel as advantage, to be honest.
Gotcha. And that's something I think will
I'm
come in time.
probably missing something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of it has to do with like, and it's weird to say it this way, but a lot of it has to do with the neutral game, right? So like when you have someone cornered, you're still playing neutral, right? Like as long as they're standing up, it's still neutral. The main difference again is that they can't control space anymore. So if you're imagine if you're playing somebody and they never move, they can never move backwards, right? So then you can just kind of walk into their space, walk out of their space. You can control what buttons are advantageous to you and all of that. You can do all of those things and they can't do anything about it. And that's what playing in the corner and that's what sex is like. Like I can't move.
Right.
Right. And if you're standing at the right spot, say right under the timer here, you can also anti-air jump-ins, right? If you had a dive kick and went for that, I could anti-air it, right? The threat of DI is also there, right? So you know, that's like the strength of the corner, right? And Ed does a really good job. And again, this will happen, I think, as you get better at the game. Once you start recognizing how the space control works, you'll start recognizing the advantageous situations that occur when you're in the corner, right? Or when you have them cornered, rather. So again, we'll look through the games and we'll talk about situations that might come up, but hopefully that's kind of giving you an idea of how you can apply offense better, right? So
Yeah.
sure. And the reason I bring it up too is because you talked about how do I deal with people that are just down backing, right? And this is kind of how you do it, right? Is that since they're just blocking, what's happening now is that they're trying to react, typically, not always, but typically they're trying to react to something that you're doing. Like if I walk into the space, maybe they press a button, right? Maybe they try to walk forward, maybe they jump, whatever, right? But normally when they're just down backing like that, they are trying to react to something. Now, if you're
there's nothing else for you to do if you're
exactly
down
right.
backing.
So if you talk about what I've been talking about earlier, which is space dictates what you can do, moving into that space elicits a response, right? From there, what you can do is you can identify what this player wants to do when you walk into their space as they're down backing, and then you can apply the counter to it. If all they do is down back, and then when you get close, they tech, you just shimmy them, right? So you walk forward, walk back, they delay tech, they miss it, right? And you whiff punish them. If they just press a button when you get close, you walk into the space of that button, walk out of it, whiff punish, right? Then you're able to open them up. If all they want to do is like wait for you to get close to jump, you do the same thing. You can walk forward, walk back, anti-air them or air them or whatever, right? So like the response that they're trying to go for, you're trying to pay attention to that, and then you try to apply the counter to it, right? So that's how you typically will open up defensive players, right? Because a lot of times when they just back up, down back all the way to corner, 9 times out of 10 what they're trying to do, again at this level, is they're trying to get you to the corner, like chase them down, and then they'll either side switch or jump over you, right? And then all of a sudden now you're in the corner halfway through with them.
Accurate.
And then they do it again, right? So like, unless it's like a guile or something, which likes that, you know, they want to be backed up or whatever, but they'll do the same thing again, right? So they'll play you in the corner until you win a knockdown or something. And then from there, they'll just back up again, right? Play super passive, wait for a reaction, right? So it's very difficult to deal with because the onus is on you to identify what they're trying to do, because they're just going to do whatever, right? They're just like, oh, I'm going to react to XYZ, or I'm going to autopilot whatever, right? So it's your job to open them up by doing these things, right? So, all right. So unfortunate here, you kind of autopiloted into a special here. I think it's because there might have been some lag. Let's see.
Nah, that was autopilot. Like what I in my mind was going for, like I'm expecting you to take one step more backwards because you were pretty close. And I was just trying to catch you walking backwards and then
gotcha, and then go for that. Yeah, I mean, you had a little meter to work with here. So right before this. Alright, so there's the... Alright, so from this situation right here, you could have done a drive rush, right? You have meter to kind of work with. Using a drive rush in this situation probably would have been a little bit better, mostly because you force a mix-up, right? So from here, you drive rush, you're going to be plus after whatever button you press, and I have to deal with that, right? So, you know, I didn't talk too much about meter management, so I think you do a decent job of that, but, you know, be willing to spend it in this situation, right? Because if you look at the overall situation, right, you're kind of down on life, one interaction away from dying. I have a good amount of life here, right? Meter-wise, you know, you're about to get level 1 and all that. So using a little meter here to try to get more space back is the way you get back into this game, right?
Yeah, I think my meter management is also a bit autopiloted. Like some of the games, I'm in burnout permanently, and some of the other games I'm not.
Gotcha.
Like it has its ups and downs.
I mean, burnout is what it is, right? It means you're using meter, right? It's like, you know, I don't know how much American football you watch, but like there's Brett Favre that says like if you're throwing interceptions, it means you're throwing the ball, right? So if you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing, sometimes you're gonna burn out. That's just what it is. So
yeah, fair enough.
Okay, good whiff punish here, right? So let's talk about this. So you had mentioned earlier that you think that some of your whiff punishes are quote unquote lucky, right? And I'm here to tell you that that's not always the case, right? You're probably better than you think you are when it comes to this, right? So if you look at this situation here, I'm walking forward, right? All right, so you saw the button come out. So if you look at how long this takes for you to react, that's 11, 13, something like 19, 20 frames. This is well within the realm of human reaction time in a fighting game where you're looking for this, right? So what I'm going to say is that I think that whiff punishing as a concept has less to do with your reaction time. Now, it's important, right? Reaction time is important to some extent. But it also, a lot of times, these whiff punishes are predictive as well, right? So you probably thought I was going to press a button here. Or in your mind, maybe subconsciously, you're like, if they walk up and press a button here, right? I'm in space for it.
Yeah, I was looking for it. Yeah, I was looking for a button. Like if you would have done a jab, I probably would have done the same. Maybe.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. The button, like the spacing came in. I was misspaced, right? I'm too far because I actually expected you to keep walking forward. So I whiff my button. I whiff a big button, so it just has a lot of recovery, and you're able to whiff punish it effectively, right? So I think that this situation here just should tell yourself that you can do this, right, effectively. If your opponent is whiffing a ton of buttons, right, and you have an idea of their rhythm of when they like to press, the whiff punishes are actually, half of it is reaction, but the other half is prediction, right? You have to set yourself up for a position to land the whiff punish in order to do it, right? So in this situation here, you're in a good position to whiff punish me, because you're standing at a space where all my buttons will whiff, right? I think you're gonna keep
Yeah.
walking forward. I whiff my button, right? I made the mistake, right? And you punish me for it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Here I missed the heavy blitz.
Yeah, there
So.
was a blitz after, right? I was like, oh, that's okay, right? Is what it is.
Yeah, no, I've been working on that combo for the last 2 days, so it's new, it's fresh.
Gotcha. And here, yeah, combo stuff, that's just lab work, so it's totally fine. Here's an
Yeah.
interesting situation, right? So, I try to press here, right? So I delay tech through that first thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then I try to jab. I try to challenge you here a little bit late, and I get counter hit, right? Right, you do the snatcher. So
Right.
here,
Was I out of a drive rush with my medium punch?
so this is after this right here. Right, you drive rush out of stand medium kick.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's
that's
there's a button here, so you're plus, right?
perfect. Yeah.
I block this next. I try to actually challenge your plus frame here, right?
Yeah. This is a frame check.
Yeah. So I miss it, right? So I should have actually pressed
Mm-hmm.
sooner, right? But I still would have gotten hit either way, right? But what I will say
Yeah.
is that sometimes me as a player, and this is like totally a Juzzy thing and a side thing, is that sometimes I'll challenge on plus frames like this, right? So even if you're plus, I'll try to press. And the reason for that, one is because I'm probably not going to die, right? If you hit me from here, it's probably not going to do a ton of damage to me overall because you don't have any meter left to extend.
Sure.
So it's whatever if I get hit.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that a lot of players in these situations here, especially these ranks, will get super greedy with their plus frames, right? So you're plus 3 here, which means you can press up to like a 6 frame button, and it'll tag anything I do for a 4 frame button, right? So normally,
Right. Yeah. I think this one also trades with plus frame for me.
yeah, 4 frame here. Let's see. No, it's a 3 frame. So this should work. Oh, it says a 7 frame. Sorry. So if I had actually mashed my jab against this,
It would trade.
It would trade, right?
Yeah. And I think I'm
Yeah, and it's
plus.
yeah. There's some level of there's probably a trade combo that you might be able to get there. I didn't quite see what the frame data looked like, but
No, it's the what's it called? The target combo.
yeah. So
Medium heavy into blitz or kill
yeah,
rush.
yeah.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit spaced out. You'd have to lab that situation, but
Yeah.
so what happens in that scenario, right? And this is something that I think we'll need to talk about a little bit is when you're plus, right? And the opponent knows you're plus. 9 times out of 10, we're like the opponent, the defending player is supposed to just block, right? Oh, I'm -2 or -3. I'm not really supposed to press here because I'm gonna get frame trapped by a 6 frame move or better, so I can't press here, right? So what happens? The defending player will delay tech, right, or block, so they can't press anymore. So from there, right. Now that that's been established, you as the offensive player, the next time you have plus frames, you're kind of incentivized to do something else, right? You could go for the same frame trap. Maybe the opponent doesn't bite, right? They still block. Or you can try to steal the turn with like a bigger button, right? Maybe you go into like a stand heavy punch, right? Or some other bigger button that would be a bigger reward, or give you some other incentive even if you hit that on block, right? Stand heavy punch on block does some chip damage or whatever, right? Something like that. So you're stealing the turn with a bigger button that has a bigger gap, but because the defending player is incentivized to block, you kind of get away with stealing the turn, right? So even though you're plus 3, you can press a 10 frame button. Your opponent's not going to press anything, right? Because they have to block, otherwise they get frame trapped. And then now you get away with that additional button landing, right? Or you change it up, you go for a throw, right? So you're plus 3 here, you walk up throw, right? Because I'm incentivized again to just block, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that's where that mix up comes in, right? That's how you open up players that are just defending your offensive pressure, right? Is that
I see.
inside of those strings that you're doing, there's opportunities to change what you're doing, right? So imagine like if you did that plus 3 thing, right? The same situation, and I delay tech every time, right? So now you do your string off a drive rush, right? I block it, I delay tech, right?
Yeah.
Now you have a shimmy opportunity, right? So you have a plus 3 situation that you can back up. If I delay tech, you blow me up, now, right? Now from there, I'm incentivized to not delay tech, so now you can start throwing me again, right? Or something else, right? Or it could be I back up, right? Maybe instead of in that plus 3 situation, instead of me just standing there, maybe I try to back up, right? So that if you try to throw me, it'll whiff. Now you can go for like a low or something else, right? So all of these kind of situations come out of the fact that you have plus frames, right? So when you talk about like, oh, how do I open people up? Why is it everyone's blocking everything I'm doing? The spacing thing, I'm kind of feeling kind of lost. It's because these other opportunities that are coming in that are inherent to how plus frames work in the game, you may not be realizing or taking advantage of what's happening there, right? So like your opponent's defensive tendencies become way more important to pay attention to when no one is making these big hard reads anymore, right? Like I bet you in silver, or silver, platinum, silver, gold, platinum, even low diamond, in that situation, they'll probably just reversal, right? Or they'll do something that is inherently unsafe or something crazy after, or they just get frame trapped because they're always mashing, right? So
Yeah.
once that stops
Yeah, right.
happening,
Yeah, I've been working on my drive reversal punish, to be honest, because a lot of people tend to do this
yeah,
at this
yeah,
rank.
and that
Yeah.
6 frame punish from Ed is really good, right? So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
I love it.
but that's what I'm talking about. Right? Is that when it comes down to how do I change what I'm doing in neutral when you have these, or how do I change these advantage situations so that I can actually open my opponent up? That's where it comes in. You have some plus frames that gives you some advantage that allows you to pick a different option that exploits whatever defensive tendency that the opponent has, right? Again, if your opponent is always delay teching, you can apply shimmies, right? Or delay options,
Yeah.
potentially, right? If your opponent is always just blocking, you can go for throws, right? If your opponent is always mashing, then you can just, continue your frame trap and you'll hit them, right? Now, of course, people will change what they're doing, right? A lot of times, if you get hit when you get hit, right, you're like, oh, I'm not going to check that option anymore, whatever. So that's when the whole layering option comes in. The layering stuff happens, right? Oh, I did this to you the first time, so now you're going to pick a different option. So now I'm going to pick a different option to beat the thing. All that stuff. That's when that starts to happen. But none of that can occur if you always do the same thing. That always gets beat by the same option, right? So that's where some of that change up has to happen, I think, right? And I think you do I think we'll see here that you actually do a decent job of like picking certain options. It's just that I think that your the sense of what kind of defensive option that I'm choosing isn't quite refined yet, so that's something you'll have to work through, right? So anyway,
Yeah, no, I honestly like cycling offensive options. I tend to do a bit more from a feeling. I haven't thought about the plus frames like that, so that does give me a bit of a. If I'm conscious about if I drive rush into standing medium punch, I have like I can first check if they're falling for the frame trap. If not, then I should try to mix that up
yeah,
next time.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? Because you go for the frame trap, they're not falling for it. You go for a throw, they're delay teching. Okay, now I can try shimmying from there, right? Because that option there should give you enough space and time to back up out of throw range, right? For most characters. So it's something you have to lab, obviously, but these are the things that you need to consider when your offensive sequencing is starting to get dealt with, right? There's always a counter, right? There's always an option that should beat what your opponent's doing, like every time, right? Yeah. All right, so from here, right, you're actually doing a decent job of keeping you in the corner here. Nice anti-air. Rock, paper, scissors on the snatcher. I don't DI or anything. All right, and then what happened here, right? You got counter hit. So this whole sequence is actually
Very
pretty
common
good.
situation for me.
Yeah. But let's take a look, right? Same situation as before, I think. You press a bigger button that gets stuffed, right? So from this situation, stand space-wise, crouch, stand, medium kick. Might be a little slow, might be a little close, right? You can see you're trying to press it here. It clips the start up here, right? Or in this case. So again, space-wise, right? When we're both standing in this kind of spacing here, right? Like nothing's happening, right? But I'm kind of taking initiative here and pressing my button, right? But I do press something that's fairly fast, right? But you could have pressed something that might have been able to stuff this. The hard part here, though, is that you're technically minus after this, right?
Yeah.
So I wait a beat. I don't press immediately, right? I'm not mashing or pressing immediately. I kind of wait a beat, right? And the reason for that is actually not because I thought you were going to press, but because I thought you were going to back up, right? Because you've done that before, right? So from this space here, I thought you're going to back up. Right?
Actually.
Now it just happens to clip the startup of your button, which works out great for me, right? It's perfect. But the reasoning in my head was, you've done this option before. Now you just happen to pick an option that happens to lose to that, and it is what it is. But again, the space dictates that. So you might have been able to press a different button, or you could just blocked, right? Maybe you don't do anything. So it's just something to consider, right? If you're getting hit in that spacing a lot, like, oh, I'm standing in that space, I get hit a lot. What's actually happening? Am I being a little too aggressive? Am I being a little too passive? Am I backing up? Right? That type of thing. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Right. So here's another situation, right? So you do the Superman punch, right? I know it's not really Superman punch, but you do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Comes in, you're
Mm-hmm.
minus here, right? So
Right.
technically, you shouldn't actually press anything because, like, if I press I can press up to a 6-frame button here after this and tag anything you do if you try to press a 4-frame, right? So in this
Yeah.
case, what I do, I actually press a kind of a big button. Here's the 8-frame button. So if you had decided to press on time here for this, it actually would have tagged me. So I kind of, this is kind of greedy on my part here, right? And maybe
Mm-hmm.
this might have been a mistake on my part too. Maybe I was trying to press crouch me kick or whatever here. But in a minus situation like this, you typically can't press again, right? So your options here, once you're minus, would be to like continue either block or parry potentially, right? If you want to try to parry bait me into pressing like a 4-frame button, or
Mm-hmm.
now if you wanted to YOLO it, you could reversal here, right? So some options, right? The YOLO reversal really works well against players that like to take their turn back when they're minus, so you can try doing that if you think I'm going to do that, which I did here actually. I pressed kind of a bigger button here. It's very high risk, right? For medium reward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You could also just
Yeah.
continue blocking, which is like the safest option, because if you block this button here, you can try to potentially punish me or take a turn back, right? Or you can go for a parry, right? Again, that all works really well against people that are aggressively taking their turn back, and you get a chance at a perfect parry, right? So some things to consider. But when you're minus in that situation, you really shouldn't normally be pressing buttons most of the time. Now, again, if there's something you're noticing in my gameplay that allows you to exploit that, like let's say every time you're -3, I always press jab, you go for a parry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or reversal option, right? And you're like, okay, I'm seeing that from them, so I can try to exploit it. But normally, like quote unquote normally, if you're minus like -3, you really can't or shouldn't be pressing here. If anything, you can apply a defensive option, right? So you could delay tech here potentially, right? Because I could just walk up throw as well. So anyway, right now you're back in the corner, defended well, right? One thing I will mention is that in the situation right here, when you're in the corner already, there's not really a big compelling reason to hold just back, right? So if you look right here, right, after you block
Mm-hmm.
this, or after the Swifts rather, you're kind of just holding back, right? Like
Oh,
standing here.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like again, there's not really normally a very like compelling reason to hold back like that. You should just be crouch blocking because you're not going anywhere. There's nowhere to go. Now, of course, if
No.
I'm jumping or something
Yeah.
like that, you need to block high. Totally makes sense. But in this situation here,
Mhm.
there's not really a huge reason to hold back. So if I decide to crouch a medium kick here, it tags you, right? And I think it happened to you in a different game. So just have to be careful about that. So here, I think what happened is you went for a button, which I think was fine. You walked up, pressed a button. The issue, I think, is that it whips. Now, this is very close, right? Like,
Yeah.
reasonably, probably, could have hit me, could have not hit me. I think that's a reasonable
Mm.
spacing to press that button, and I think it's going to hit. This is very close, right? So I don't disagree with this option or selection of option at all. I think this is the 100% the correct thing to do, right? If you're trying to fight your way out of the corner in a stable-ish manner, the best way to do that is to walk forward and contest, right? You can't whiff punish anymore, so you have to like force the situation by walking forward. You take a lot of risks doing that,
Right.
but that's the inherent disadvantage of being in the corner, right? That's what it is, right? You have to do that. So again, I think
Right.
this was totally fine. It's just unfortunate that it whiffed, right? And then you get kind of hit for it. Now, if you look at the frame data here, right, what actually happened, I didn't whiff punish this, right? In the sense of like reacted to your stand medium punch. What actually happened was I pressed this button at a space that was I thought was appropriate, and you just happened to whiff a button, right? So like if you look, right, like I'm not doing some crazy whiff punish read. I'm just standing at a space
No.
where I think the button will hit you at the tip, and I just do it, right? Like if you
Right. Yeah. That's a bit of the same situation. Like you saw something move forward, and
yeah.
you pressed your button that you intended to press.
Mhm,
So.
mhm. If you had not moved here or moved forward a little bit and not pressed the button, this where this foot comes in, this actually still tags you in the corner, right? Now this happened super fast, right? If you look at this real time, right? I didn't actually
Yeah.
react to you pressing the
No.
button, right? I just kind of stood at a space that I thought this would actually hit at. Now I just got lucky here, right? But that's part of it is that when you're standing at a more appropriate spacing for your buttons, these things do tend to happen more often because you're pressing a button in a space that makes sense, right? And then like good things happen when that occurs, right? So
Yeah, there's definitely a certain dynamic that's like when because I started, this was my first fighting game pretty much. And when I first started, like I started realizing that at certain points, at certain ranks, when you climb out of it, you're like you press buttons at exactly the moment when other people want to press buttons, right? So you constantly get counter hits, you constantly get other things, and there's a bit of a dynamic that I don't know how to explain, but I have a feeling that that dynamic is here, especially visible in the corner,
oh yeah.
because me walking forward and then the contesting with a button, and you in tandem walking backwards and contesting with a button at exact the moment where I decide to walk forward and press a button. That's so weird to me, and in a match it feels like you predict that I want to move forward, right? Um, and sometimes it all comes together in a series of counter hits where my opponent is just constantly staying close, pushing buttons, and at the moment he walks back and I walk forward, yeah, at the moment I walk forward, then he walks back and presses a different button. I'm like, well, that's a great sequence of events. It feels very coincidental, right? So, but
It,
that maybe that's a bit of a dynamic that's on to feel and the behavior of an opponent
yeah.
to download them pretty much.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? It can the sequence that happens can feel kind of random sometimes because every time I press my button they're blocking. Every time I walk forward they hit me, whatever. But
Yeah.
if you break down what had been happening in the game we played, a lot of times I'm not actually making some hard read or predicting what you're doing right. I'm actually just pressing a button
Mm.
at a space that's appropriate and you just happen to walk into it, right? Or you just happen to be pressing
Yeah.
something else that gets clipped by it, right? And we saw this, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
I pressed a faster button closer that stuffs your bigger button, but at the same space, right? Like that type of thing. That
Mm.
happens a lot. And I think like for a lot of players, they don't recognize like that's actually what's happening until someone tells them that that's what's happening, right? Because it's not really intuitive,
Yeah, that makes sense.
right?
Yeah.
It feels like
No, no,
I'm just pressing
it's
buttons, right? But
yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah, no,
cool.
it's definitely a perspective I did not think about that way.
Yeah.
Uh, on how to press buttons. Like the only thing that I did, I am trying to pay attention to in a match is where I try to keep walking forward, backwards, and press a button when I think they are in range, right? But then I still whiff a lot,
Yeah.
and it just feels bad when you're like, oh, but I'm trying to recognize it so bad, but your opponent, of course, also moves back and forth constantly at a speed which is perceived as really fast.
Yeah, your brain it's funny because like unless you're playing like Akuma or someone with like a really fast walk speed, a lot of the walk speeds are actually pretty similar overall. Unless you're playing
Hmm.
against like JP or Guile or like Geef or whatever. But a lot of the walk speeds are similar, right? So like your brain tricks yourself into thinking that that guy is moving a lot faster than I am, right? But it's not the
Yep.
case, right? A lot of times they're actually moving at more or less the same speed. In fact, most back walk speeds are actually slower than most forward walk speeds, right? So like they're backing up and you're walking forward, that distance is actually closing faster, right? Like you're actually closing
Oh,
distance
I
on them.
see.
So like it's
See.
not necessarily intuitive, right? But the reason why that happens though is because when you have to attack, you stop moving, right? So the 6 to 8 frames, like assuming it's a medium button, the 6 to 8 frames
Mm.
of you pressing the button is 6 to 8 frames that they're still moving back, right? Like if
Oh,
like all
right.
things considered,
Yeah.
right? Like if I'm walking forward, you're walking backwards, I press my button, the startup I can't I'm not moving anymore, right? Well, normally most moves, right? Like some moves have advancing whatever, but like I'm not moving anymore. So you're still moving back, right? And that's what kind of
Yeah.
causes the whiff to happen potentially, right? It's like, oh, this space was correct, but then it wasn't because of the 10, 8 to
At the
10 frame
time
startup,
that it
right?
became active. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Your active frames came out, they're already out of the way, right? That's something that I think
Right.
players don't necessarily intuit right away because it's like, oh, I'm standing at the space, let me press the button. But like you said, your opponent is still moving, right? Like potentially. So
Yeah. Yeah.
cool, man.
All right.
Cool. So let's take a look at this replay here. Again, I think that
Mhm.
it's important to watch these replays too when I do this because the ways that
Yeah.
I'm applying pressure and maybe beating you is different than how you may be facing your ranked opponents. So like you try to apply something that'll beat me, it may not work against these guys, right? So let's take a look.
No, exactly. Yeah, and to preface this replay, like I think he did a lot of donkey kicks,
Okay.
and I I find it a really difficult button to deal with,
Mhm.
first of all, but I would like to find not necessarily the counterplay to Donkey Kick itself, but the thought process on how to deal
Deal with
with
it.
these kinds of um, abilities, right? These
Mhm.
kinds of special,
Gotcha. Let's take a
like
look.
Akuma stuff, Chun-Li's advancing forward, normal,
Mhm.
those kinds of things.
Okay. Let's take a look. And we'll see what
Yeah,
situations came up and see how we may be able to apply it. Now, this may be specific to this player in particular, but let's take a look. So
yeah.
here, right, you're just kind of trying to feel each other out. Take a fireball here, no big deal. All right, so here's an interesting situation, right? From here, right? And this is what we talked about, right? He might have been in range if they had walked forward, but they continue walking back, right? Now, if you look at
Yeah.
the spacing, though, I think this might be out of range in general, right? So just something you have to work
I
on.
think so too. Now that you
Yeah, if we
show
look at
it,
this.
yeah,
Now, if they'd
for
walked
sure.
forward or pressed a button into this, this might hit. But you kind of whiff it here, right? So
Yeah.
Rias, you have a long recovery here, right? You don't really have a chance to do anything. So you kind of get
Mm-hmm.
clipped. Well, actually, that's not true. You could have probably pressed something here, potentially, but you have to react, right? So there's a little bit of time before this comes out.
Mm.
You try to react with
Yeah.
a bigger button here with a crouching heavy kick, right? This is kind of big. It's tough to check drive rushes with this. So if you are going to
Mm.
check with a drive rush, I think for Ed in particular, I think the stand light kick or crouching light kicks are probably going to be best for your drive rush checks, right? Because they have good speed, they have good range, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you had done that instead from here, let's see. All right, so from here, right, the Ryu is starting up, right? Right. So like stand light kick would probably be a good option if you start to see the green. Similarly, crouching light kick
Yeah.
probably, right? Something like that. I think those are your better
Mm-hmm.
check options, right? Because again, the startup is good, the range is good, right? So you can stop
Yeah.
their drive rush. Now, converting from that is something you'll have to lab out, right? How do you convert from
Mm-hmm.
these lights? But the real
Mm-hmm.
like goal, if you will, of checking these drive rushes is to stop them from drive rushing, right? So they spent a bar and they got hit, right? Go back to neutral, not a
Yeah.
big deal, right? You don't get a huge reward out of it, but the point is that they now like are incentivized to not drive rush, right? Because if you demonstrate you can check drive rush, they'll stop doing it, right? So
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And I think that's also it's also thing like I don't expect it. While I could have expected it at that range
mhm.
because Rio would have either done fireballs or death, probably, like,
Yeah, so
or heavy donkey kick.
yeah, they could have done something, right? But yeah, it's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
you'll have
For
to
sure.
just kind of work on in terms of like drive rush checks.
Yeah.
Because drive rush is very important in this game, right? Raw drive rush. So being able to check it at certain ranges, especially with a character like Ed that
Mm-hmm.
can get a good reward from that, it's worth labbing, right? So
Okay.
hey, he jumps your drive rush, no big deal. Okay, so what happened here, right? This was the Ryu kind of YOLOing the DI, right? So they jump, right? It's blocked.
Mm-hmm.
Stand heavy punch, right? And then just the cancel and DI, right? So you press a button that's
Right.
unfortunately not cancelable here, and you get clipped for it, right? So getting hit by this, it happens to everybody. Like I would have got hit by this too.
Oh, it's not cancelable into the eye.
It does not appear to be. So
Ah, I
because you did
see.
a crouching light kick, right? So let me take a look
Yeah.
here.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay. Cool.
Oh, cancel confirmer one is 12 frames. I'm sorry. Maybe you were late. Let's see. Because you got punish counted here, right? So let's see. Maybe you were late. Okay, here's the crouching light kick. Oh, okay. So the window is really tight. Like
Yeah.
you had to be basically mashing there, right? So
Yeah, I see.
if you had reacted to it, maybe or something like that, but that's really tight. I don't fault you for getting hit there. That's what I'm gonna say. Because if you look right, right,
Right. That's
yeah, it's
yeah.
like you would have had to know you're gonna cancel in DI to hit that cancel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay, no big deal.
Yeah, I
But
would brush this DI off as a
yeah,
freebie for the opponent. To be honest,
exactly.
like it happened.
Yeah, it happens, right? But now in your head, you have to consider that the opponent went for that, right? So what happens from here? Now, if the opponent goes for these kind of DIs, you would change how you react to these buttons now, right? So let's say that they do the same sequence again, right? Here's the stand heavy punch, right? So instead of that, maybe you do something else, right? Maybe instead you do this. Oh. Right?
Yeah.
You try to jab instead, right? So something that's a little bit easier
Oh,
to cancel,
okay.
right? So what happens when you jab into DI is that you get a little bit more time to see that the DI is coming, right? So if I reset this, right? Right? If I'm paying attention now, right? This is for next time, right? Not necessarily this time in particular, but the next time a situation like this happens, you could try taking a turn back with jabs, and if they go for the DI, you're just ready to hit it, right? Because the cancel window feels probably a little bit better with the jabs than it does for the stand light kick or crouching light kick, right? So like you saw that, right? It looks like I had a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't give you the
like you
the
probably
screen
even
freeze,
do a
right?
second jab.
Probably, right? So let's see. Well, maybe not a second jab.
Oh, not yet. Okay.
Right, but right, or you just wait, right? The other option again would be just this, right? Right, just reacting to that in general, right? So, but this is something you have to consider when you're playing against players like this. If they do DIs like that, you have to add that to your mental stack and being like, okay, situations like that they could DI, so I have to be careful about pressing my non-cancelable moves because they could just DI it, right? So, anyway, you get hit here, right? No big deal. See the conversion from them. Okay, so very interesting from the Ryu player here. They land this. Right? And then they burn out for it, right? So this is actually pretty poor meter management, in my opinion, because they can't kill you from here, right? So there's no reason for them to burn out. They could have taken a meterless approach here. But this is something you'll have to consider as well, right? Your opponent is a little bit YOLO-y in that sense, right? They went for the DI, neutral like that. They go for burnout strings like this, right? So in your head, you kind of have to pay attention to that, right? They are willing to burn themselves out for that, right? They kind of autopilot strings. So let's see how they go from here. But the DI one is the important piece, right? They went for DI, pay attention to that. Now they can't DI anymore, right? They're in burnout, so you don't have to worry about it for right now. But something to keep in mind as you go through the set, right? Okay. All right, see how you defend here. I'm hoping you just block. Ooh, okay. So that's a tough read. You went for the reversal here, and I think the reason why you went for reversal here is because you had gotten hit multiple times, right? So you just got hit with this thing.
Yeah, this guy was committed to pressing buttons, it felt like.
There's one, right? There's two.
There's also 2 gyms already as well.
And then the third interaction, you're like, I'm tired of this crap. Right? Now, again, I say that facetiously, but it's true, right? Like, when you lose multiple interactions in a row like that, you kind of are, like, tilted a little bit to, like, okay, I'm done dealing with this pressure. I want out, right? So, just have to be careful.
For sure. I'm low on health. I just YOLO.
Yeah. But you have to be careful, right? So, in this situation here, you could have continued blocking here because the Ryu is burned out, right? Just kind of a poor punish here. Could have killed you. But you could just continue blocking, right? So if you just continue blocking here, right, are you able to anti-air? Maybe get a side switch here potentially or whatever. But the Ryu can't really kill you from here, right? The only way he kind of kills you is if you open yourself up like this, right? If you think about it. If he had been paying attention and did an actual like full punish here, like, I think Ryu for here would be like a stand heavy punch or stand heavy kick starter into like level 1. I think he might have been able to kill you here. He doesn't do it. It's okay. But do you consider the risk reward when you went for the ODDP here, right? Like the reward would be they get off of you and get back to neutral. But like, again, they can't kill you in that interaction normally, right? Unless you make that mistake. And they're burned out, right? So they're less of a threat overall. So something to consider when you do the ODDP, right? That, like, these factors have to come into play when you make that defensive decision, right? So
yeah.
Okay, so he burns you out here. Now, from here, it's very difficult to deal with donkey kick, right? Because now his medium donkey kick is actually -4 instead of -8 or whatever. So Ed's options to deal with this become way more limited, right? You only have really crouch jab to deal with this now, right? So if he spaces
Yeah,
that well in burnout, there's not much you can do, and that's unfortunate.
fair enough.
Okay, went for the hard read Tatsu here, right? I'm not sure why he went for that. He just did. Just went for it. Right? So he actually did just do the Tatsu here, right? Maybe he's expecting a fireball or something else. YOLO'd it, but, you know, it is what it is, right? So again, these
Yeah,
type of, when you run into players like this, you just have to kind of pay attention to how and when they decide to go for that big move, right? Because if you just continued blocking here, they Tatsu into you and you get a punish counter opportunity, right? So,
right.
all right, let's go next round here. Okay, good jump. Missed it by a little bit. If the Ryu is paying attention, they could have DPG, but it's okay. You get in. All right, so now let's see what happens from here. Okay. Oh, that's unfortunate. So you're charging
Yeah,
the wrong snatcher there, right?
yeah, I was, and I think I wanted to dash backwards, but
Yeah, that's okay.
sometimes my fingers fell.
All right, so you're getting hit a lot here, mostly because of the sand. Okay, neutral jump.
Ah,
Yeah. Let's see. Good. Okay, he burned out for that, right? So let's see what happens from here.
yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we look at what happened here, right? Right, there's one neutral jump. So what this Ryu was doing, right, and if you pay attention here, is he would just neutral jump heavy punch into stand heavy punch, right? So like he did this to you in the first round. He did this again, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, early in the round he did this, right?
Neutral jump. Hey.
Right. So what you
Yeah.
the way to deal with someone that does this, for better or worse, is after this whiffs, you have to be ready for an anti-air, right? So like once
Yeah.
you press your button here, you're just ready for the stand heavy kick, right? So like for at least for Ed in particular, right? Now if you have the skills to pay the bills, you just do this, right? Right? But if you're, like, if you're like me, don't have the best anti-airs, you just stand heavy kick from me, right? Right.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough.
if you're aware of your opponent's tendency to neutral jump here, then you just gotta be ready for anti-air, right? That's just what it is. I think the way that this player was beating you though was that they would land that into OD fireball, jump in, stand heavy punch again, right? Right. That's the same sequence as he's hitting you with, right? He's hitting you
Yeah.
again right here, right? Right. So he went for the jump heavy into stand heavy, jump heavy punch into stand heavy punch into fireball or OD fireball. Like that's how he was kind of getting you, right? Is that he was applying that same sequence over and over again, and you weren't quite able to deal with it, right? You thought he was gonna do something different, he never did, and then he just died to it, right? So
Yeah.
when it comes to players like this, right? So he's trying to jump and all that, right? When it comes to players like this that are kind of just applying whatever they want to apply here, your goal is to typically just think about what they're trying to do and then try to counter that, right? So like he's incentivized to jump right now because one, Ryu does mad damage when you land a jump in, right? But the other part to this is that if you're not ready to anti-air, right, then he gets to jump for free, right? So you have to kind of disincentivize them from jumping by punishing them for doing it, right? And again, the way you kind of do that against players like this is you don't try to run offense anymore, right? You're at your job now from here. Like, okay, that first round, the way they played, if this was me, my goal now is to just react to their jump. Okay, so I'm just going to stand outside of their button range. I'm not even going to consider like neutral or anything like that. I'm just going to wait for them to jump and then anti-air it. Right? A good job jumping the fireball. Right. Additionally here, I would also maybe not take my turn back after this, right? So from here, so he actually just mashes it, right? The issue though is that you don't press in time whatever button you're going to press, right? So from here, right, again, a whiff jump in has a ton of recovery, right? Now if you weren't able to recognize that this is going to whiff right away, totally fine, something you don't have to work on. But there's not a lot of frames between the recovery here and the time he hits the button, right? So you have to recognize the best way to deal with this is to anti-air it in the first place, right? DP or whatever, right?
Right.
So like from here, right, DP this, and then if they do land here, just block, right? If you are going to take a turn back aggressively here, then you have to press it sooner. But the Ryu is demonstrated that they're just doing the jump heavy punch into the stand heavy punch, right? Right. So they hit you in that time because you went for that. But you can see here, like, what happened and how you got hit right here was they happened to tag you as you weren't doing anything. And this was a little unlucky, actually. So you block. You're blocking back. And then for some reason you let go. And then it hits you as you're walking. Oh, you're trying to walk forward potentially here. So that's a little unlucky overall.
Yeah.
But you can see that the pattern that the Ryu was exhibiting was that they were just going for this thing over and over again, and it was kind of clipping you, right? Okay. And then again, neutral jump. Bit of a weak punish on their part.
This is literally the same situation, pretty much.
Yeah. What happened in the first game? Same thing in the second game, right? So, like, a Ryu player like this, he's not adapting to anything you're doing because what he's doing is working, right? Like, there's no reason to change what you're doing. Yeah. So, really, when it comes, and this is in general, right? When it comes to players that are doing this kind of pattern, right? Their autopilot for that is usually pretty, like, they're pretty dead set in that, right? So the main idea would be for you to break that autopilot by stopping them from doing what they want to do in the first place. So in this case, hanging back a little bit, the neutral jump comes or the jump comes, you anti-air it, right? Eventually, either they'll die because you keep doing that, right? Like they keep jumping and you stop them, or they have to do something else, right? And a lot of times players like this have just that, and this is how they've gotten to the rank they're at, right? Is they've been doing this. And you saw how effective it was, right? If you weren't ready to deal with it,
Yeah, for sure.
ran you over, right? So that said, you had also asked about donkey kick in particular, right? So, and I think what we can talk about here is how I would lab the situation, situations that you see. So let me create another room here. Oop. Oh shoot, did I just mess this up? Yeah, I did. Okay. Privates. Shoot, all spectating private. 16. Okay. All right. All right. So, now how do you, if you were to, do you go into the lab a lot like this, or go into practice training mode and try stuff out? Do you do that often or not really?
Well, I'm every day in the lab at least doing anti-airs and combos and some Oki setups. Generally I sometimes try to lab some stuff out and it does give me some information, but I don't think I do it nearly enough. And and in the back of my head I'm like, I might as well just learn more of the fundamental stuff and just like keep on going, kind of like. It
No, that's
doesn't
fair.
it doesn't feel too rewarding like learning this one thing on one character.
Not at all.
So
Not at all.
that's a me problem.
Yeah, and not at all. But here's how I would do it, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do this, now this is kind of a way to do it, not the way to do it, but if there's a specific thing that's causing you grief, this is how I would do it, right? Is I would just go into a club training room. I would kind of, well, let me switch to Ed here. Right. So what you said, donkey kick. Now this applies to anything, but we're talking about donkey kick in particular, right? So first thing I would do is
Yeah.
I would look at the frame data. If you have that available, great. If not, you could just go into the training room and do this, right? So if you look, right, Ryu is -8 here, right? So on a donkey kick,
On medium though.
on
Okay.
medium donkey kick, right now, heavy donkey kick I think he's -3, and then light donkey kick is like 11 or whatever. But most Ryus in general will be doing this, right? So like if you were to look at you know what the donkey, you know, you can look at the donkey kicks themselves and all that, but you see all that this was -8, right? So what I would do from there was I look at your tool set, right? That's 10 frame, that's 9 frame, 6 frame, 5 frame, right? 8 frame, okay, right? So maybe the flickers are a little too slow for this, right? But this is pretty quick, but might be too short. This reaches kind of far, but also might be too short, right? Right, you just basically go through your options here, right? And then you would from there figure out how the best way to punish the donkey kick, right? So Ryu here is set to do his donkey kick, right? After a jump, and he blocks, right? right? So you have to be on point for that. Right, that's too short. Right, whatever else that comes out of it. But that's how I would deal with it. That's how I would lab the punishes.
Right.
Now, that's if the Ryu misspaces it, right? So if you look here, the Ryu's actually kind of close, right? So if I do this where he's kind of at the tip, right, I'm out of range, right? So what that means, though, is that your job now, if they're spaced correctly, is to actually try to parry it, right? So even if you block the tip, right, your job is to not try to do this. Right, try to perfect parry it. It's very difficult, right? It's very difficult. That's why Donkey Kong is so good, right? Is because not every character has a good 8-frame punish. But there, so I'll take that back. There's kind of two ways to deal with it. One is to try to parry it, right? So you're in a situation where the Ryu's been throwing low donkey kicks. You try to react to the donkey coming in and you parry it, right? The second way to deal with it is by using space, right? So if the Ryu is really good at space and donkey kick, then you have to try to manipulate the space so that he does do it at a space that is unsafe and punishable, right? So again, from here, right, you can't do anything, right? But if you're able to force him to force this, right? If you're able to manipulate the space so that his donkey kick is too close or even whiffs, then that's how you deal with it, right? But you can't really do that live necessarily, like in game. It's very difficult. I think that the unfortunate way to deal with some of this stuff is by going into training room, making like one recording like this or one button or whatever, and then trying to figure out the space, right? Because additionally, I could do something like this, right? Right, like I could stand out of the space, have him whiff it, and then from there I can punish with my stand medium kick, right? Like Ed's bread and butter button, right? You can just do that and then go into your combo, right? So that's the unfortunate way to deal with it. Now, how I arrived at that conclusion was by doing this, right? So like I know the frame data, right? So I have an idea of what buttons I could press, and then I have to actually go into the training room and figure out the spacing where I can press those buttons, right? Like you saw, I had a 7-frame medium punch, but it doesn't reach, right? My 8-frame crouching medium punch does reach, but only if I'm inside the spacing for it, right? So that's the unfortunate like reality of how to deal with some of these like kind of busted moves, because like you know, in game it can feel like if they're always spacing it correctly, then you need to do something to force that spacing to be off, right? Maybe you move forward, maybe you go for a parry, or maybe you do something else that forces them to do it in a space that doesn't make sense. Now, of course, if your Ryu is a god and is able to space that correctly every time, it's really hard to deal with, right? Like I run into Ryus all the time. They're like always staying in the right space, right? They've been playing Shotos for the last 100 years or whatever. They're always staying in the right space, right? So in those situations, you have to try to force them to not use it in the right spot. Or additionally, what could happen is you now forcing a space where the donkey kick doesn't work, and now they can't throw it anymore, right? If they throw the donkey kick, they know they'll get punished, so they won't do it anymore. So then now you don't have to deal with it, right? So like that's another option for this, right? So but yeah, as far as like punishes go, especially for Ed, like you saw that you have to kind of come up with what would work for you based on the spacing, and then go from there, right? So cool, man.
Yeah, I should maybe I should just take like one or two things from a session and just lap that out and experiment a bit on it. And of course these guys also don't do everything perfect, so there's ways for me to get into their space kinda
Right.
and punish them.
Yeah, like you can punish that a lot too, right? Like you said it on the head. Like even at a super high level, people make mistakes. There's just less of them. You know, so
Fair enough.
if you can force that, then perfect, right? So so cool, man. Yeah. Other than that, the other way I would do it too, or you could do it if you wanted to, is to just replay takeover, right? So you go into a match, something hits you that you're not familiar with, or like, how do I deal with that in that situation? You go into replay review, do the takeover, and you experiment, right? So you saw what we were doing during the training session, where I would take over, right, and press buttons and see what was happening. That's another good way to do it. In fact, it's probably the best way to do it since Capcom introduced that feature, right? It's actually really cool because you don't have to lab, you don't have to learn how to do the thing that you're losing to. You just have to know how to beat it, right? So like, for example, beating Blanca level 2 options, right? Trying to deal with that mix up, or like, you know, something like that. I don't need to know how to do the Blanca thing anymore. I just have to lose to it, right? And then now I have the replay, and now I can experiment, right? I can try things in a manner that allows me to do that, right? So
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I've been wondering about replay takeover because
Mhm.
there's, of course, I've been using that once in a while just to lab some stuff out, which is really nice. But then there's, for example, one example is the how it's called, what Akuma does. I think it's a demon flip into overhead.
Mhm.
Um, I can lab that, and I can of course come to the conclusion that a light DP might beat it most of the time,
Mhm.
or 100% of the time if timed correctly.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just wondering if it's realistic for me to actually judge is this the right reaction, because it is reacting to a demon flip with a DP
Mhm.
is, to me, is feels extremely hard, and I don't know if I should put the expectation on that that's the solution to beating it.
Gotcha. So let's talk about that, right? So, in general, when you're doing replay takeover, a lot of times you know it's coming. So it's like, okay, this is the punish that now I do. Now, like you said, is it realistic or
Yeah.
not? I think a lot of times what you can do is you can look at the frame data and make a distinction from there, right? So Akuma Demon Flip, if I look this up right now, right, if we talk about the Akuma Demon Flip into the overhead, right, that's like the specific situation we're talking about. So if I take
Mm-hmm.
Demon Flip, right, or I guess it's called Demon Raid now, whatever, into the Guillotine, which is the overhead, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I look at the frame data, the Demon Flip itself is 18 frame startup, right? So by itself is
Okay.
18 frames. The fastest it can come out
Before you can do anything.
before Akuma could do anything, right? And then the
Oh,
overhead is
okay.
16 frames, right? So if you consider that as the startup, 28 frames before the actual active frames come out, that's almost half a second, right? So 60 FPS for Street Fighter 6, right? So 28
Right.
frames, I think, is very reasonable for reacting to. That's actually the same speed, more or less, of a jump in, right? So like a jump in, if you consider that, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like it is like something like 19 frames for them to jump, right? So let's see, what was it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So and then the button has to come out still, right? So I think it's very reasonable to react to a demon flip with a DP. It happens all the time, right? But the
Right.
way
Fair
that you
enough.
arrive at that conclusion is by looking at the frame data and then maybe doing a little bit of experimentation yourself in the lab, right? Have them jump and then you see how long it takes. Now, Ed's DP, to be fair, is a little slow, right? It takes what was it, 12 frames or something like that for it to come out. But if
Right.
you were to react in a reasonable amount of time, say 17, 18 frames or whatever, I think that you'd still be able to anti-air because the anti-air invulnerability for Ed's DP should still be there by the time that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
By the time the move comes down. Alternatively, you can use something else. Like stand heavy kick works really well, I think, against those demon flips, right? Because the angle that it comes out at like intersects with how the
Mm-hmm.
demon flip's gonna come in. So that is another option for you, right? To do that. Now remember, what's the goal of
Right.
defending the demon flip? It's just to stop them from doing it, right? Just because you don't get the full
Yeah.
DP doesn't mean it failed. It means you actually hit them, right? If you stop them from doing the thing, doing little damage is the icing on the cake, if you will. But the real meat of it is that you stop them from doing the thing, or you checked the option.
Yeah. Everything is better than them being plus in your face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or hitting you,
Sure.
right? So,
Or hitting me. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
even worse.
right,
Yeah.
even worse. So yeah, I mean that's how I would do it, and I would apply the same kind of logic to anything you're running into in the game. You're at a point, I think, where some of this stuff is going to start to matter, right? Because, and you saw, right, like even though that Ryu was doing a bunch of stuff that you could deal with, the mistakes they
Mm-hmm.
were making were a little bit subtle, right? They weren't going for random DPs in neutral, right? I mean, they did do one, but it is what it is. They did go for a YOLO Tatsu at the end there. It is what that is. But if you look overall,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't doing anything that was like easily punishable in most cases, right? Now, of course, you
Mm-hmm.
can argue about jump ins being easily punishable and all that stuff, but they weren't doing anything that I think would be considered obvious to players at that level right away, right? Like you have to kind of
Yeah,
go
I
through
think I
that.
think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that's what you said at the start, and I think now it really starts to make sense. It's not the things that they did that I needed to beat. It was the things that they were going to do that I needed to beat, right?
A little
So
bit, yeah. I think the
like
yeah, again, the mistakes become more subtle, right? So like where
yeah,
if we look at where the Ryu actually made mistakes is mostly around the neutral jumps, right? If you had dealt with the neutral jumps, then it's likely you would have won that game, right? But
right.
it's hard to consider that as like a quote unquote mistake when it's working, right? Like you're getting hit by all these jump ins, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Obviously the mistake would be to anti-air them, but it's not like, this easily punishable special move that got blocked, right? They weren't doing some wake up super that you blocked and you punished them for it, right? Or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
They're doing something that works for them. There's a specific counter to it that you need to apply. But is it like, the classic, is it a blunder or an inaccuracy? I don't, it's hard to necessarily say because it was working, right? So, that type of thing, I think that line of thinking, if you will help you a lot later on because, as you climb through the game, those mistakes, those opportunities do tend to dry up, right? There's less and less of them. Where you have to either manufacture them yourself, right, by forcing the opponent to make a mistake, you generally have to manufacture that by forcing your opponent to make a mistake. There's a lot less unforced errors as you climb, right? So you have to force that, force that mistake. And again, a good way to do that, tying back into this, is through the correct usage of plus frames, right? So you're forcing them to make a decision that may be a mistake, right? And then you go from there. Right? So.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So
And that part needs to just speed up in a match of in a first to two, pretty much.
Yeah, that's the real hard part of this game, right? Is that you only get X number of interactions for you to learn how to deal with that, right? So
Yeah. Okay.
But that's how it is, right? You have to force that situation. Otherwise, if you can't force that situation on your opponent and they don't make mistakes, then, it's harder to win, right? Now, not saying it's impossible, right? If you want to play neutral only, right? You don't want to do anything else, but you still have to force mistakes there too, right? Because you can't play neutral with someone that's just blocking the whole time, right? If they're just standing there blocking, you're not going to whiff punish anything if they don't press a button, right? So,
No, right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So, cool, man. So that said, you have any other questions for me at the moment? Anything you want to ask?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think most of it's pretty clear. I guess it's just really a process, of learning to pretty much observe my opponent in a way. It's just like the difference between offense and defense. Like I've been thinking about this. Like, of course, these kind of players they tend to press buttons, right? So I try to recognize, like, do these people press buttons regardless of what I do? This Rio would probably press buttons regardless of what I've been doing.
Yeah.
So for me, the best way is to just exploit that behavior, right? The other way around would be the ones that always down backing. That's where I try to. Sometimes I feel like, should I deploy more driver's jab pretty much in my game
You
plan?
could.
Like I've been thinking about that. Like I cannot handle that very well. Like I'm trying to find a bit of a way for me to progress because I have a specific goal in mind, and I would like to find the path for least resistance in a way. So I'm like, if I could get there without too much learning all the things with my driver's jab, because I have not been doing that since I reached Diamond 3 pretty much. If I can do it without that, I would be amazed. Like I would be happy not doing it. But I have a feel I don't know if it's necessary for me to add that extra layer of stuff
Gotcha.
against players like this, players like even the down backers. They still do Diamond 3 random stuff like I do, right? So is it
Yeah.
should I really
So
layer that extra offense in it? That's my
what I
bit of
would
my
what I
question,
would
I
say
guess.
is that if it's a tool in your toolbox that's working, you can continue using it. Right? So there's kind of two. I feel anyway. This is an opinion in particular. I feel there's kind of two approaches to this. One is that, like, if I can win without this busted tool, then when I start using the busted tool, it's going to work better, right? That's like one methodology that I think a lot of people play. And I think that's similar to what you're saying here. Is that, like, if I'm not using a driver's jab and I'm using these other tools that maybe require a little more work or maybe don't have, it's not as free, if you will, quote unquote. Then when I start re-adding the tool, it's going to work better, right? Then that's one train of thought, and I think there's a validity to that, right? Saying that I'm not going to use the tool now, so that when I re-add it, it's going to work better. That can be effective. The hard part now is that the onus is on you to make those other tools work, right? You now need to work on your whiff punishing with stand medium kicks and stand heavy kicks, or anti-airing and all that stuff, anti-airing with stand heavy kick, or DP, with punishing correctly with a crouching medium kick, creating the correct spacing and all that stuff. You have to, now the onus is on you to do that, right? Which might be the goal you want, right? Like maybe that's the way to go. It is going to be harder, right? Because you're not using a tool. Now, the other train of thought,
Fair enough.
and this is what I kind of subscribe to, is that why not use the busted tool until it stops working, right? So a driver's jab may work for you all the way into master, right? It may work all the way for you into like 1500, right? It may continue working for you.
Mhm.
So why not use it to get to where you want to be? And then once it stops working, then you can figure something else out, right? So, it's still, you're still going to have to learn how to use the other stuff, right? The main difference is that
Mhm.
now, like, as you're using the tool that is really busted or whatever, you can kind of get away
Mhm.
with a lot by doing that, right? It's like, oh, I don't necessarily need to learn all the whiff punish stuff. I don't learn all that stuff, right? Maybe I can just get away with using this until I reach a level where it stops working. The good thing
Right.
about this is that if you try to apply neutral fundamentals to your existing ranked games right now, you may end
Mhm.
up getting blown up a ton, right? Because your opponent is not necessarily playing footsies, right? So, like, footsies as a concept, right? The neutral game, if you will, the ground based
Yeah.
neutral where you're trying to press buttons at each other, attack them, get in space, all that. That only happens when both players kind of agree to it, right? So
Right.
if I want to play patient neutral with you, and all you want to do is jump, I'm gonna lose, right? Like, I
Mhm.
can't play footsies with someone that is unwilling to do the same thing, right? So that's why, like, I
Fair
think
enough.
that doing the drive rush jab option, like going for the better tool that's working currently, is
Mhm.
good because it helps you to deal with it either allows you to run people over in games where if they can't deal with it, you're gonna win, right? And you can refine that autopilot. But also, if the opponent is not interested in playing neutral and you just apply these neutral skips and beat them, that's the way you check
Mhm.
them from using their neutral skips, right? So, like, if you're able to just kind of run them over, right, you're stopping them from yourself from losing to those other neutral skip tools, right? Eventually, you're going to get to a
Yeah.
point where people are able to check that and they have more neutral. But at that point, your opponent is more willing to play that game with you, so you actually can learn it maybe faster, right? Like, imagine if you played me a
Fair enough.
million times versus playing your ranked games, right, a million times. Do you think your neutral would improve?
Mhm.
Probably, because I'm playing that game. But in your current ranked
Right.
games, you're probably not playing that game, so you're not actually getting experience playing neutral. You're actually getting experience doing neutral checks, right, or neutral, stopping and
Yeah.
neutral skips, right? Still important. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. You still need to be able to do that to win games, but the fundamental aspects of, like, neutral itself, you're not going to get the same kind of feedback, in terms of growth, if you will, because I guarantee you right now, if you were to take some of the neutral aspect stuff that we had talked about, like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
only going to focus on whiff punishing with stand medium kick, I'm only going to focus on, like, playing correct footsies and all that, you're gonna get
Mhm.
frustrated. You're gonna get frustrated when you get run over by Ryu jumping, right? Because you're not working now
Right.
on that aspect. So, like, there's some trade offs there. Personally, I think,
Fair
and
enough.
again, for total opinion, just do the thing that's allowing you to win games because that feels good, and you can refine that autopilot so that you get an idea of what was working. Once it stops working, you can
Mhm.
figure something else out, right? Like, driverless jab is very strong. You can get into master with that. If you apply driverless jab correctly, stop all the neutral skips, apply some Oki, you could probably get into master. Like, with your gameplay right now, you could probably get into master, right? So it's up
Mhm.
to you, right, on how much you want to suffer, if you will, because if you try to play
Right. Yeah,
patient
that makes
neutral
sense.
in the diamond ranks, it's really hard because you have to
Yeah.
not only you have to stop all the neutral skips, and you still have to do all the neutral, like, the neutral game portion too, right? You don't have, if you're
Mhm.
intentionally stopping yourself from using a tool that allows you to bypass the neutral game from their side, if you're basically
Mhm.
saying, okay, you can't deal with my 3 point shot or whatever, but I'm not going to do it, right? Like, again, I know I use a lot of
Yeah, that
sports
makes
analogies,
sense.
but
Yeah.
that's what I mean, right? Is that, like, why would you take
Yeah.
away one of your better tools, especially in a mode like ranked, right, where
Yeah.
winning does matter? Now, of course, in a custom
Yeah.
room, you know, playing sets with somebody else, and you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. Like, totally not a
Mhm.
big deal. But if you're going to take this into ranked, where you do have to win games to continue your progression, there's no reason not to use that. It's not necessarily a shortcut, I think, because
No.
it's going to stop working. It's just that I think
Yeah.
where it stops working is a lot higher than you think where it's going to stop working at, right? So,
Fair enough. Yeah, it's also I've been it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like I've been using Flicker a bit more, and now I've been using Flicker a lot less,
mm-hmm,
like the special one,
mm-hmm,
like the snatchers.
mm-hmm,
Purely because the reason, like, people are so eager here to just DI or
yeah,
jump it. Like I've at this point I'm like I don't even need to use it anymore because it doesn't bring me anything.
mm-hmm,
Because people will do that shit anyway.
yeah,
When
yeah,
the moment they see my hand glow purple, they just DI and there's nothing like.
yeah,
Of course, there's stuff I can do, but like it brings me more defeats than it brings me victories, I feel. So I just stopped doing it
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
dedicated myself to just stopping their offense in a
Yeah,
way.
I think
Um,
raw, like the raw snatchers, that'll get DI'd more often than not, especially in these ranks. But like if you're able to do meaty
yeah.
snatchers, like that's where the real power is, right? Little few of those setups there. You set up a rock paper scissors situation where I have to guess parry or throw, right? So
Mm,
like that type of thing, I think is better for the snatcher usage. I know you did it maybe once in our games, but I think
mm,
that is something. Now if we're talking about adding tools to your toolbox, that's something I think you should definitely add, right? So setups and
yeah.
oki situations and all that, I do think you need to add those, right? So you're
Right.
you're at a point in your game where I think the oki situations you're getting become more important. You have to
Mm,
force those guesses because the risk reward is so skewed towards you as the offensive player, right? Because you think about it, right?
yeah.
If if I'm Ed, I knock you down. I go into a snatcher rock paper
Mm,
scissors, right? If I get it
mm,
right, I could kill you, right? I deal a ton of damage, right? I can go into super, I can deal 3,000, 6,000 damage death, right? I can do a ton of damage from that.
mm,
If I'm wrong,
mm,
right, and you DP it or defend it, what happens, right? I take 1,600 damage, or my throw gets teched if I decide to do that instead, right? Like you reset back to neutral,
right.
but I'm not gonna die necessarily as Ed by being wrong in that situation. But if you look at the defense player side, if they're wrong, they die, and if they're right, they
Mm,
only get a neutral reset, right? They don't really get a huge reward for being corrected, right? So like forcing that situation
mm,
more often than not will allow you to win games when maybe your neutral game wasn't as tight, but because you got
mm,
a few more of those interactions on Oki, you didn't have to play as much neutral,
mm,
right? Like imagine if you were playing,
yeah.
if we were playing right now in the games we were playing, and you didn't have to play neutral at all. All you had to do was guess correctly on my defensive situation, right? Using snatcher RPS, using setups, whatever. Like it
Mm,
takes away my ability to play neutral or my quote unquote skill, if you will, and forces it down to how well I can read your ability, your offensive layering, right? Your offensive sequencing, and
yeah.
even at a high level, right? Like maybe at a high level, it's a little bit better because high level players do tend to pay attention to tendencies. They do option selects to cover multiple options, etc. But
Mm,
you have a better chance of winning if you do that to me over and over again versus if you have to win more neutral interactions, right? So again, something
fair
to
enough.
consider
Yeah.
because and I'll talk about this a little bit here, and I think you might be alluding to this here is that if you are not as good as your opponent, right? If your opponent is better than you in some aspect of the game, whether that be neutral,
Mm,
oki, whatever, spend as little time as possible in that aspect of the game, right? Like if your opponent is able to out neutral you, right, in some capacity, why not apply the neutral skip to try to get around that? Why not apply more setups and more oki pressure to get around that, right? Like spend more time in the phase of the game where you have an opportunity
mm,
to actually win, right? Because if you try to play patient neutral against someone that is better than you in neutral, you're going to lose, right? Like happens to me all the time,
fair enough.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like in my mind, I'm like, well, why would I continue doing something that may not work? Why not force a little bit of action on their side, give myself an opportunity to win, right? Because if they guess wrong, I can deal 3,000 damage, 4,000 damage, right? And they only have to guess wrong 2 or 3 times for me to win it, right? So why not force that?
Fair enough.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that all said,
Right.
do you have time to run it back? Did you want to run another set, or you gotta go,
Yeah.
or
Let's just
okay,
run another set. Yeah.
sure,
Yeah. In the meantime, I had one more question
sure,
because there's of course also the thing of watching replays
mm-hmm,
of other people.
mm-hmm.
Um, but like the thing like which replay should I watch? Like if I watch Lashar, that's not gonna bring me much. I feel because these players play
Ah,
on a different level, right?
okay. So I think there is some value in watching pro level play. The main thing I would
Hmm.
look at, not necessarily like how they're making reads or decision making, because their decision making is at another level. That's just fact, right? What I would pay
Right.
attention to is the button selection that they do in situations, right? So like if you watch the replay, you'll see that they tend to press certain buttons at certain spacing, right? However that happens to
Right.
look. I would pay attention to that, right? So like, oh man, they pressed that stand medium kick at that space. Why did they do that, or what is that happening, right? And what does it look like? And
Mm.
then you would from there kind of build a plan of like, okay, well if they're at that space, I'm gonna press this button, right? Normally, when it comes to pro level play, the reason they're making a decision is because it's typically the most optimal quote unquote decision to make at that point in time, even if something as simple as pressing a button, right? So I would pay
Right.
attention to button selection, right? I would also pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to combo routing, mid-screen combo
Mm-hmm.
routing, corner combo routing, all that. Like steal that tech because that's very easy to steal. And then I would also steal their setups, right? So like after a knockdown, what do they do? Do they do some sort of frame kill? Do they do sort of manual time thing? Do they do like a jump, safe jump, right? Like all of that stuff is what I would steal, right? Because imagine for Ed, you watch Lashar play, he's like doing something crazy, right? But then you notice that
Yeah.
at a certain space, he does stand medium kick into some drive rush. Then he finishes it with like a blitz and then safe jumps, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that sequence, why is that happening? You don't necessarily need to know why. I mean, you should, but you know the real reason they're doing it is because it stops your opponent from being able to reversal you. But you can steal that sequence and do pretty well, right? You go into a safe jump setup and you press some buttons after, right? Now you're applying pressure in a way
Right.
that mimics what a pro would be doing, right? And then from there, it's like, you know, you can build upon that, right? It's like, oh, I do this sequence because it seems to make sense to me when it hits, right? I'm able to, you know, come up with offense after in the Oki situation. And that's how you build from there, right? That's what I would look at. When it comes to like decision making and like the hard reads and all that, like I don't think that's hard to it's hard to like consider because again, like the way they're thinking about the game is different from us, right? Like you said, it's like a different level.
Yeah.
But you can take a look at the decisions that do show up in game, right? Like what buttons are they applying, what combo routes are they taking at mid screen, corner, or whatever, right? And like Oki situations, right? That's what I would try to steal, those setups and stuff, right? Because those are the things that we can apply to our game at our levels, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially on like hit and all that, you can apply it to our game and steal that tech, right? So
That makes
that's how
sense.
I would do it. Now again, it's hard to like say that that's 100% the way to go. I think there are different ways to review high level play, but you have to consider
Mm-hmm.
that like you want to apply things that will apply to your game, right? Like I can't make the
Yeah.
seventh layer read on my opponent when all he's gonna do is wake up DI, right? Like it doesn't work that way,
Fair enough.
right?
Yeah. No,
But if I could apply
that's fair.
a setup that allows me to defend against the wake up DI, maybe that's worth stealing, right?
Mm.
So anyway,
Fair enough.
yeah, go ahead and queue up. We'll run our first three. I'll leave the
Yeah.
mics hot. The only thing I would consider for now, since there's kind of a lot, would be to consider
Mm-hmm.
like what buttons you're pressing when we're close and what buttons you're pressing when we're far, right? Try to use faster buttons when we're close and
Right.
slower buttons when we're far, right? So that's the only thing I
Right.
can think of because there's a lot we talked about, so and a lot of it is not
Yeah, for sure.
necessarily like immediately usable. So
For sure.
it's close. Nice. Oh. Yeah, you gotta watch the back.
Yeah,
leg.
I exactly the moment I uncrouched.
Yeah. Nice.
Mm.
Nice. Oh, I was just a little bit late, I think, on the kill rush. Oh! Yeah, I think the kill rush there was
Punish
just a
counter
touch late.
snatcher always looks so slow on YouTube videos, and then I'm trying it myself, and I'm always just too late. It's horrible. It's the
It's just
worst.
something you have to get used to space wise. But yeah, it's what it is. Nice. Woo. Oh. Oh, caught the forward dash. Nice. Oh, that's just unfortunate.
Nice.
Charged the wrong one. That's all right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh.
Oh, do the blitz. Oh, nice. Oh, caught backing up a little bit there. Like. Uh-oh.
Oh shit. Fuck.
Oh, got
Ah,
clipped.
unfortunate.
But I think you're getting the idea though. You're using. I think your button selection is a little bit better. The counter hits that are they're not getting counter hit as much in the corner there. That was nice.
Ah.
Gotta watch the autopilot there.
Mm-mm-mm.
Nice jump. Oh, I think you can backdash from there, right? Like the
Yeah, I can.
sway.
I think I can.
Oh, nice. Oh, the kill rush is minus, huh? So I know the result was more or less the same, but I think you did a much better job in the corner, not getting counter hit. Like you were picking jabs and like medium buttons as appropriate space wise, and you saw how much more effective it was, right? You were actually able to hit me a lot of times getting out of it. So,
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah, it created way more opportunities for me to do a bit more.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Now it's just a
And
matter of killing
especially
you. Yeah.
especially I think holding back that much if when you're not deciding to throw me
Mm-hmm.
and I'm holding back like 3 times you push yourself out of range.
Mm-hmm.
It's also just waiting it out for me to jump out
Yeah.
because at that moment it's like yeah, I don't know, you're not that ready for it then anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It's basically putting me at a position where it's awkward to try to anti-air. Like I have to back up a little bit to put myself in a better position to anti-air. At least with Ken, anyway, right? I could cross cut, but I'm not great at that in particular. But you saw how much more opportunity you had to get out of it. Now, of course, actually getting out of the situation requires a little more practice, a little more, and all that. But just creating that opportunity is a great stepping stone because now you can experiment with like, okay, you hit my jab, they backed up. Now what can I do from there, right? What can I confirm that into something? Can I create more space, etc. Right? So, so yeah, no,
Yeah.
that was great, man. I'm hoping that will propel you into Masters. I think your gameplay right now can get there. Refine a couple of these things, and I think you'll be good for sure.
Cool. Yeah, that's really good to hear. Yeah, I've been having a few long breaks, but I'm really like wanting to get there.
Cool, man.
Um,
Yeah.
so
So yeah, anything else you want to ask
yeah.
before we wrap up?
Um, no, not really.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No,
So
I think this was very helpful at least.
great,
Like
man. Yeah. Glad to hear.
it's given some perspective on how to approach things. It's just that at certain times, you know, when the players start to get unhinged, I start to feel very awkward, right? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
like I have to
That's
deal with this shit now.
yeah, that's how
It's
it
like
goes, right? The game does
yeah,
allow you to play that way, and to their credit, like they even if you're playing unhinged or in that quote unquote unhinged, you're still taking a lot of risk, right? You still have to play in a manner
for
that
sure.
forces the opponent to not be able to deal with it, right? So the game allows you to play that way, and I think that now that you kind of got an idea of how to deal with that, hopefully dealing with that it becomes a little bit easier, right? Because a lot of times you run into unhinged player in ranked people think of two
Mm,
things, right? Either, oh crap, I have to deal with this YOLO Ryu that's going to kill me by jumping and all that, or I get to practice my anti-airs and kill this guy, right? Because he can only jump. So,
Yeah, fair enough.
get to be the latter at some point. So, cool, man.
I have one more
Yeah,
question,
yeah,
if it's fine for
yeah.
you. Because I like in the last match it wasn't really apparent, but I do know some OP setups. Like I do know, after specific knockdowns, I kind of know what buttons to press.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like I have the feeling that it's not so much that they block my wake up string. It's more about what I do after that, right? If I respect my minus situation
Mm-hmm. So,
or
like, if
not.
you,
Like that's where I open them up and not
oh,
really the block string itself that's opening them up
I see. So, like,
because
when
I don't
you,
have an overhead.
right. So on knockdown, when you knock someone down, you do your setup, and you're saying
Hmm.
that you're saying that the opportunity to okay. So on knockdown, typically, the reason why we apply those setups is because it forces your opponent to not pick a specific option, right? So like when you think about what a meaty strike does in particular, like let's say you do, was it the blitz, uh, or
Hmm.
even take something simple, right? So like a throw loop situation or whatever else. Let's say you have a setup that allows you to be a certain number of plus frames where your strike will be
Yeah.
a
So
meaty and
so
potentially
if
plus frames.
like
So
yeah.
good. Yeah.
So I can do medium blitz into kill rush into standing medium punch and I
Mm-hmm.
will be +1 on block
Yep.
pretty much.
Yep. So yeah, what you're saying is correct. So the plus situation there, if they block, right? Let's say they just block. The plus situation you're
Hmm.
forcing there is what causes that is the mix up, right? So that's the mix up after. So there's two parts to that,
Okay.
right? Is that like first, if they when you do the setup, right? It not only
Hmm.
guarantees your strike or whatever will be meaty, so that they can't mash button on wake up, but a lot of times
Hmm.
those meaty strings that you're talking about or meaty setups allow you to get extra plus frames, right? And now we talked about with plus frames, what that allows you to do is mix up, right? So like because you're +1, they have to guess. So you do technically to some extent because +1 isn't 100% real, but the idea there is that since you have a plus frame, a plus frames, right? You can go into strike, you
Hmm.
can go into throw. You may not be able to shimmy from that situation, but they do have to make a decision after, and that's where the mix-up happens. So what you're saying is 100% correct, right? It's not necessarily
Okay.
the setup itself that causes. Now, if you hit them, right? If they mash and you hit them with that
Or
stand heavy kick, of
yeah,
course, right? You get a
that's
huge
great.
reward. But if they block it and they have to deal with the plus frames after, that is the mix-up itself, right? Because like at a higher level,
I see.
most of the time, like we recognize setups, right? So like when like I even said it when we were playing was that, oh, you did the kill rush late. I shouldn't have been able to do what I just did, but it worked because the kill rush was late, because I recognize that setup or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, when you do those setups and you apply them and they give you the reward of plus frames, for example, on block, that is where
Hmm.
the mix up happens, right? They do
Right.
have to block the setup, and then they have to block the following mix up, right? That's where the decision making happens, right? So yeah,
I see.
you're 100%
Oh, that makes a
correct
lot
there.
of sense.
Yeah, because like if you
Yeah,
think
that
about
might
it,
change
yeah,
things.
how else can you do it, right? Like people, if I always locked on wake up against the meaty strike, why would I ever go for meaty strike? It's not always because the strike is going to hit them and you're going to counter hit them out of mash. It's because it forces a
Hmm.
situation where you can try to open them up, right? Whether that be go for a throw
Right.
after, right? Go for another strike, frame trap, whatever. The point is that they have to make
Yeah.
two defensive decisions in a row, and you can try to open them from there, right? So yeah, that's a
Right.
good way to think about it. Is that it's not the setup not only gives you a guaranteed option against a wake up buttons like mash buttons. It gives you an
Hmm.
opportunity to mix them up after the block, right? So that
That makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're 100% spot on with that. So yep.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, and that applies to
Yeah.
neutral situation. Right? We talked about that. So like if you do a driver's cancel, get plus frames, same deal. So
Hmm.
yep,
Yeah.
cool
Fair
man,
enough.
cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
yeah,
And
cool.
I'll be working on my matches
Yeah,
in the
for sure,
coming
man.
weeks.
Yeah, reach out to me anytime if you have any further questions. You know, the Discord is super helpful for that. So, yeah, I'm just gonna do the outro. I can on
Yeah,
Discord
for
if you
sure.
want. You can be muted on stream, but you can take off. All good. You know, I know it's late there or whatever. So, all right, man. Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah. Right. Have a good one.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Cool. Thanks for watching, guys. Spit down, shut up. Appreciate you guys coming in and checking out the stream and all that good stuff. Yeah. So one sec here. Yeah, Solidani, thanks for the follow. Sorry I didn't say that right away. Usually focused on people playing 50/50 gaming. That's Street Fighter 6 in a lot of ways. So this is Sit Down Shut Up. You know, I run this through the Fight Rise Discord, so let me put the Discords into chat here for you guys. So run this through Fight Rise. Fight Rise is a fighting game community focused on helping players get better, right? They run bi-weekly events through their One Fight Stand series, basically a 7-round Swiss if you're Master and above. If you are below Master, they'll put you in a round-robin pool with 7 other players that are about your skill levels as rank separated. So it's a good time. Happens every other week on Tuesdays. So if you're looking for tournament sets, right, in a kind of casual format or casual setting, it's great for that, especially if you can't get to your own local. Fight Rise also runs community showcase events through their Urge to Fight series, right? So they take people in the community, they get to play games on stream. They also do charity events through this series, right? Every I think in the holiday season. Last year they raised a bunch of money for the Raiden Foundation. So if you're interested in any of those things, take a look at the Fight Rise Discord, or you can take a look at their Twitch channel, twitch.tv/FightRiseFGC. They also do their Big League KO. So Big League KO is a league format that is basically a round robin pool of 8, right? You get placed in that, but it's 2 matches every week spread over the course of 5 weeks. So it's a bit of a longer format, and it's spread out. They're spread out, so you do 2 matches a week, flexible scheduling with your opponent. And they're also first to 5s. So if you want longer sets in kind of a league format, this is a great way to do it. Last season, to fill up all the slots, right? So multiple pools. It's rank separated. In this case, it's typically separated by not just rank but MR buckets as well. There's some seating involved, but all that. But you get good matches, right? Round robin pool, and there's a postseasons where you get to play for play in a bracket after based on your results out of the round robin. So a really good time. And if you liked what I'm doing here, and you want a session like this, for yourself, take a look at the Fight Rise Discord. There's a channel called Sit Down and Shut Up, a region clash. I don't know. I'll ask. If you want a session like this, take a look. There's a channel called Sit Down and Shut Up. The instructions on how to join. I'm also part of the Newbie Fight Club. So Newbie Fight Club is another fighting game community focused on helping newer players get into the game. They do lobby nights every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They also do bi-weekly tournaments, I think, every other Friday now. They also do a monthly modern tournament. So if you're a modern only player and want to get into a tournament with other modern players, every once a month on Mondays that's there. So you can take a look at that. Again, if any of those things interest you, please join the Discords. I'm active on them. You can reach out to me at any point. I'll respond when I respond. Community is really friendly, especially for newer players and new people coming into the community. So if that's something you're interested in, please join. Take a look at the events that's happening. Yeah, but I'm not quite sure what the region clash is. I'll have to take a look. Did they say that through Fight Rise? I'm not sure. If it is, then you can take a look at it. If it's there and that sounds interesting to you, join the Discords and take a look. You can go from there. So cool. Again, thank you guys for watching and tuning in. I know this is a longer stream and I don't always respond to people on the Fight Rise EU Fight Nights channel. Let's take a look. Oh, I guess it's an event that Grit's running. So Grit's one of the TOs in Fight Rise. I think it's just you could probably ask in the Discord. My guess is that it's a regional thing for the EU folks. So I know the EU regions typically have their little rivalries overall. So that might be what it is. But if any of those things interest you guys, please join the Discord, take a look. And yeah, other than that, again, I was going to say, I know I don't respond to chat, but I do appreciate you guys' messages, your follows, your subscriptions, and all that good stuff. It helps me continue to do what I'm doing, right? I really appreciate it. And yeah, so with that, I'll sign off. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good afternoon or evening wherever you happen to be.